Night school.
Night school.
So last weekend, I went to visit a friend in Seattle, and I picked up Many Lives, Many Masters by Weiss. I was familiar with the book, but had never read it. Mm-hmm. And I got super obsessed with it and read it like in all my downtime in the weekend. And it's such a good read. It's 170 pages, not super small font. And it's such an exciting story that, I mean, you learn a lot, I think. I feel like I learned a lot reading it, but it's a story that's riveting. And it unfolds from the psychiatrist Brian Weiss's perspective as he uses hypnosis to help patients connect with memories from their life, because remembering and bringing your loving awareness with the intention to heal to a traumatic memory has positive psychological effects. Mm-hmm. So he was just using hypnotherapy for that. He regresses a girl to identify, because you use cues in hypnotherapy. So it's like, now you can access any memory from your life. Mm-hmm. So I want you to go to the point in time where this issue began, and you can automatically unlock the memory that relates to that issue, which is obviously an incredibly useful tool, right?
Of course, yeah.
So they did that with an issue with fear of choking, and she relived a past life memory where she had choked to death. And then he was educated at Columbia and Yale, and he was generally a scientist in the sense of, and I'm saying scientist not just as a vocation, but scientist as a religion. Like, we base our worldview off of what we can objectively prove, and that's how you live a rational life. And so he was thrown off by that, and he started researching. And so as you read the book, you're following his journey to encountering this spontaneously, then doing research and seeing it have such incredibly positive effects that he can't deny that not only is there evidence for it, but it's extremely useful. And then not only just useful, but important. So I just fell into the book and read the whole thing. And then on Sunday morning, the Airbnb we were staying at was a 15-minute walk from a Unity church. I really like Unity churches. Yeah. Walked over there. It was a great service. And they had a book called Only Love is Real by Brian Weiss, which was about soulmates. And it was his second book after this one. And so I stole it from the church, and I ordered them one on Amazon to their address. So they're just going to get one in the mail and then just be like, what is this for? I guess we'll put it in the library. I hope that's how it works out. I didn't tell anybody. I just did it. Yeah. So I was like, I know that this I know that this is neutral karmically, but I don't know if they would agree to this, so I'm just going to do it. So, yeah, so then on the bus ride back, I read that whole book. And so this was just like a weekend vacation for me. The second one was 200 pages, and both of them are just, you fly through them because they're just fun adventures.
Yeah, it sounds like a really fun structure, story, like overarching thing, but I'm also really interested to hear about the subject matter of it and what he now believes to be true about what happens before and after you die.
Yeah. And I would actually love to just start with your questions. We've never structured it that way, but I think that reincarnation is such a big subject that relates to so many aspects of our lives and our understanding of who and what we are, that it would be really cool to just get your questions about reincarnation, the world between lifetimes, soulmates, any shit like that. And then I'll just reference the book to answer the questions if possible.
That works. Yeah.
Dope.
So I guess, first of all, does he have an understanding of what happens right as you die?
Yeah, pretty much. As you die, a subtler part of your body than the physical removes itself from your physical body. So your consciousness ceases to vibrate at the physical level and starts to only vibrate at this subtler level where there's a different kind of body that's made out of something that near-death experiencers and reincarnation rememberers, or whatever you call it, would refer to as light, or a very subtle light energy. And they see themselves moving away from their body, but they don't have the sense that they're navigating the physical world anymore. They're navigating a different kind of world where just resonating with something brings you there. So it's not like you're structured in time space. And then somewhere around them, a portal seems to open that is just directly evident to them that there's a portal and it's light. They can go into the light. And then if they are so unprepared for the possibility of dying that they don't notice they've separated from their body, they can get stuck in that in-between place But if they are just able to notice, like, I've separated from my body and I'm perfectly fine. I actually feel way lighter and way better. There's a light right there. As long as they're not too attached to their identities, roles, regrets, and things like that in their lifetime, where it's like, oh, I screwed up so bad, I need to just stay here and watch. If there's not too much of an attachment like that, they just go straight into the light. When they go through the light, they interact with beings that they know beyond, like transcending this lifetime, which can be
which
more
they don't
like,
remember until they get there that they know them, I would imagine.
Yeah, and when they get there, they remember that they've always known those beings.
Got it.
Yeah, and the beings that they meet can be more like companions or more like guides, or maybe that duality doesn't even really exist there because there's not as much of a hierarchy, maybe.
By that you mean either somebody that you walks with you or somebody that leads you on a walk?
Right.
Got it.
Yeah. This book tends to emphasize interactions between souls and masters, and what it means by masters is a conscious being who does not have a body and who is so well integrated with reality that their role is to help souls who are passing through between lifetimes. And it doesn't say anything about what the masters actually do besides that, what they're learning and what they're doing, but that they're there to help along these people. And that's why the book's called Many Lives, Many Masters, is during the regressions, the people will experience the part of the lifetime that led to them dying. First, the cue that Brian does is go to something that you need to remember for your current growth.
Yeah.
So they go to a memory that comes up spontaneously. They'll remember it. Then he moves them along in that lifetime, guiding them to the point where they die. They experience the death. Then they experience leaving their physical bodies, going into a light, interacting with masters, and then it ends there. So I think Michael Newton in Journey of Souls and Life Between Lives, he has a bunch of books like that. I think he documents how they actually even move through into another incarnation. This book doesn't go much into the details of that. But yeah, to answer your question, that's what happens right after death. And so that's the game plan. If you die, go into the light and trust that someone there loves you and is going to help and take care of you. And, let's, be grounded in your roles for now, but don't be so attached to them that, there's not something beyond it.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't go, ghost?
I guess, but this book doesn't go into that. So I think it'll prevent rabbit trails if I just answer in terms of what's in this book. Because this book doesn't go into what if you don't go into the light and you kind of linger around.
Got it.
It doesn't really touch on it.
Which wouldn't even be, for the purposes of what he is doing with these people, doesn't even really matter.
Exactly,
and then
right.
In between, there was this side thing where you spent 30 years drifting around Earth. It kind of doesn't matter. The point is, you died, and then you went into the light eventually. Whether that took 2 seconds or 200 years doesn't really matter, I guess.
Right, because the purpose is not even to develop some coherent metaphysics so that we can understand the journey and everything. Like, we're not trying to map the universe. It's just, his point is just that when people spontaneously remember traumatic events from in their lifetime or what they experience as from other lifetimes, they dramatically heal. They become more trusting, more confident, more calm, and everything in their life is better. So clearly it works. If it works, it's probably true. And the experience of existing goes beyond a single incarnation. That's true. Whether it's I reincarnate over time, like I lived one life before and I'm going to live a life after. It's not necessarily linear like that.
Right.
What matters is we are experiencing this life. We are also something that experiences other lives. Baggage from this life or others affects us, and re-experiencing those things heals us. That's Brian's whole emphasis. We're eternal. We're experiencing things, and experiencing things that have harmed us heals us. So he really just sticks with that. And the messages from the masters are wise and comforting.
Okay. So after you meet with the masters, what is the process of then deciding what comes after? Do you decide, or is that assigned to you by your masters?
You decide, but you automatically decide in accordance with cosmic law. So it's not like the law... Because the way that we think of law as human beings is that human beings oppose laws on other human beings. But the reality laws, like capital L law, is more like that's just the way that things are, so we act in accord with it naturally. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I
do.
It's not like God is an external entity imposing this on me. It's like I know that if I go like this, a drop of water is going to come out of this cup. And I don't act like gravity just did something to me. I just understand that since that's the way that it works here, that's what I just did. So the people, if they have a lesson to learn in a lifetime, like in a lifetime they want to become more patient, they will sign up for situations that will test their patience. They will feel intuitively when they're not rising to an occasion that they've set themselves up for. And if they get to the end of the lifetime having not recovered that, they'll take on another lesson for the next lifetime, even though they haven't solved the previous one, and they'll take it along with them, and they'll have a lifetime that's more challenging because they're still choosing to do their work. And it's like, well, I didn't do my laundry yesterday, so today I have to do my laundry and do the dishes from today. It's like that. It's like the laundry doesn't go away. It's not a punishment, but the laundry doesn't go away.
Right.
So that's how they choose how difficult their next life is going to be. And I guess that's also kind of the nature of how they choose, like, what kinds of things they want to learn. But the book doesn't go into details on, like, okay, what's the total set of lessons? And what does it mean to learn the total set of lessons?
Right.
It doesn't go into that deeper metaphysical question.
I wonder if that is mappable, though. It might be. But so you say that there's like masters or companions there. Is this kind of the same idea as soul friends or soul mates? Like, is there a group of humans? Well, humans isn't a good word to use. Is there a group
of souls?
Of souls like you that you are working with in particular over other souls?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like we bump into each other and get quantum entangled, and then the quantum entanglement isn't concluded until the proper lessons are learned. And when the proper lessons are learned, the attachment isn't there anymore. That's what it sounds like. It's like we've learned everything there is to learn from each other, so we're done. So it's not like we're going to separate now. It's just like it's naturally
now
over.
We're cool forever.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think.
Like, it's not we're done with each other. It's like now we're together forever.
Yes. More like that. That's totally the voice that Brian Weiss has now as just a general spiritual teacher is like, we are never alone. We are always together. Right now, we're together in kind of a messy, entangled way, and that's worst case scenario. But generally speaking, we're at one forever. We're together forever. What you just said is just, it's totally like, I felt Brian's heart when you said that.
Okay.
That's his heart and what he wants to communicate. Now we're together forever in harmony, no longer entangled in an unripe way.
Got it.
Yeah.
So then I guess that would manifest sometimes as not just an entanglement between two people, but it could be an entanglement between like a larger group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I don't know, I don't think he went into this in either of the books unless I missed something. When souls are like, when light itself differentiates into a particular frequency or color, which is the generation of a soul, is another soul generated with it so that those are soulmates forever? Or is each soul individual, and when you get entangled with somebody, they become a soulmate? Or is it just that certain types of frequencies will always resonate with each other, and that's a soulmate? Are people created in tribes, or do they get tangled up with tribes? Is there just a cosmic pattern that tends to match people of certain frequencies up with one another, and that's a soul tribe? It doesn't go into the details of how that works.
Yeah.
But because the important thing is just that these encounters with these memories and these people heal us. The masters are different than soul tribe people because they don't seem to have any kind of like dependence on but I hesitate to say that because teacher and student is really an equal thing in a spiritual sense. So I don't even know if that's true, but the masters, they teach the people. There's not a tone when the masters speak in the realm in between lives, like we're learning together. It's like, hey, good job. You're moving along. You're trying to learn. That was a slip right there. No problem. You'll catch it next time. Like, it's just like encouragement, coaching, and wisdom that they get from the masters. So it seems like there is people that you're learning with and people that you're learning from. Just that I feel like the hierarchy is a little different spiritually than we would experience it, you know?
Yeah. So it kind of sounds to me, based on what you're saying, that like the idea of something like a soul tribe, which is something I'm familiar with just because you've mentioned it from that other book that you had read a little
Michael
bit.
Newton.
Yeah. The idea of a soul tribe kind of sounds like something that would be temporary, which is
right.
a weird word to use because it's about time, but it is not the whole picture, and that you probably have different groups that are relevant at different times. And then once you guys are all cool together, then you're cool together forever.
Yeah.
But
it seems that way.
Is a soulmate any different than an entanglement with another soul? Like, is there something different about a soul mate?
He seems to think so, and he doesn't go into that in the book, because the second book, Only Love is Real, such a cool story because he has now been doing past life regression for a while in the book. I'm speaking as though it's at the time. I'm speaking as though right now is at the time when he wrote the book. He's been doing past life regression for a while, and now people are coming to him specifically for that. They're seeking him out for that, so he's doing a lot of it. And he has 2 clients who are reporting the same past lives as father and daughter, as husband and wife, as brother and sister, as friends. They're having these different interactions with each other in these lifetimes. And when they report deaths, they're like with the other one, and they're both telling the same stories, and they don't know each other. And so he's like, whoa, these people are soulmates. 2 of my clients, 2 of my patients are soulmates. So he starts setting up their appointments so that they're right back to back to each other, so that they cross each other in the lobby, and they'll look at each other in the lobby, but they never talk. And one of them is moving to Mexico or something. So he's like kind of hoping that they'll bump into each other before one of them moves to Mexico. Well, the same day that the dude, it wasn't Mexico, I got it wrong. They live in Mexico now, but it wasn't Mexico, I don't think.
Spoilers.
I'm so sorry. So the dude was moving to Mexico, and the lady was flying somewhere the same day. So this was after he had his last session with Brian. Mm-hmm. So Brian was like, hey, I tried to just nudge fate a little bit, because I knew this and I felt responsible to help them along, but I also know that fate acts on its own. So I tried to just nudge it along by putting their appointments next to each other.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah, because that doesn't affect doctor-patient confidentiality, which is more sacred in the psychiatric field than any. Mm-hmm. And so the day that the dude is flying to Mexico, the lady's flying somewhere the same day. Her flight gets messed up and rescheduled. They end up on the same flight. They meet in the airport. They strike it off so much that they move their seats to sit next to each other. And on that plane, he had been having dreams where a guide came to him and said, hold her hand, hold her hand. He's like, hold whose hand? Like, this dream meant nothing. On the plane hit turbulence, and she grabbed his hand. And when their hands touched, they were both just like, they both just had like this blast of like flashbacks and stuff. And they just instantly fell in love, and they were together ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
And at the beginning of his first book, Many Lives, Many Masters, he says, for my wife, Carol, we'll be together till the end of time. So based on those 2 stories, he does seem to believe in like an eternal soulmate, one in particular. But he doesn't make metaphysical speculations, because he's a healer, not a philosopher. So he's just like, he doesn't say, do we have one soulmate? Is there someone that we're prescribed by God to be with forever? And we play all these different roles with them. And if you and your soulmate choose to play parent-child in a lifetime, because those are the lessons you need to learn for whatever reason, then should you still marry in that lifetime someone else? Like, he doesn't go into all of those questions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really weird. It sounds to me like it would probably be, it's just a more intense connection, a more intense dance that you're doing with another soul. Yeah. Temporarily, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, that's what I would assume or guess or whatever, too.
That's what I would guess. Interesting. And that thing about them touching hands and then the flashbacks, I think of Lost so often. I love Lost, and Lost is a reincarnation story. Great show. Yeah. And the final episode in particular has many characters like meeting and then having like flashes of each other and then being like, oh my God, I'm madly in love with you. I remember that now. We both died. Right. And then like having those moments together.
That's cool.
It's a real tearjerker. It's great.
Yeah, I got chills telling that story. It's so cool.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I'm interested in how much our lives that we live are determined or freely lived by us. Because the idea that we're picking a life to live, like when we do that, how much of it are we picking? Are we picking the starting point, or are we picking like a trajectory of a life? Like, am I picking a life where I conquer the world, or am I picking a life where I'm born in a specific place and I have these skills and we'll see what happens? Like, what is it that does that make sense? Like, what is it that we pick?
I have two answers, and honestly, I don't think either of them answer the question, but I think that they're both helpful, and I think they would both be aligned with what Brian is doing. His work is about healing, not speculating, but I think that both of these answers would be in tune with what he's doing. The first answer is that experience itself is the basis of reality. Reality is not made of a bunch of stuff. It's consciousness experiencing itself. So it's all one. And so there's a certain perspective that one could take in consciousness where it could see the whole picture. And seeing the whole picture would mean being able to witness every detail in the picture. And the details in the picture from our more gross and less subtle perspective take place in linear time or in organized space. But from this other perspective, you could just see the way that everything is, and it's all happening in one instant. But then you can zoom into the picture and you can experience any part of the picture as though it's spontaneously unfolding for you. And from that perspective, it genuinely is. And so the free will versus determinism thing is a way of, you look at reality in a way that takes free will into account. Is like, I need to choose to live the life that my heart guides me to live. I need to choose to live a life of integrity, creativity, presence, generosity, and it needs to be an active choice that I make like every moment. And like from that perspective, that's beautiful. And that's how you live in tune with fate and live an active, free life where you're like a real conscious person that can dance and move, and like that's the good life.
Yeah.
Then you can play with this other perspective, which is deterministic, which is to view the fact that everything is determined. The beginning was perfect. The ending is perfect. The beginning plus the ending is the totality of the one moment, and all of the details in the middle are completely determined. There's nothing that you can do to mess with God's plan, which means there's no reason to have any fear or mistrust in reality. So that perspective is beautiful for that reason. And to be able to go freely between those two perspectives is what the Egyptians referred to, for example, as Osiris. Was it Osiris and Horus?
Yes.
I always get these wrong. But it's being fully grounded in the story and being fully detached from the story. To be able to play with both of those. Be the eye that sees the whole story and the avatar that acts in the story. If we can be comfortable with both, we've got a really, really good level of faith. So that's my first answer.
Yeah. And I really like that. That answer resonates with me a lot. Like,
okay, cool.
I think about that idea a lot of like trying to be simultaneously present as what I would say is lower Raleigh, like the Raleigh that's a human animal that lives here.
Yeah, yeah.
And also be consciously higher Raleigh, which is a perspective that I view as like the thing that observes and calls lower Raleigh, like the thing that's capable of distinguishing those two things. And I feel like being able to be in both of those perspectives simultaneously feels like a really important spiritual skill.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Because it's like, I should be grateful for this moment because it'll never happen again. But I should not be attached to this moment at all because it's the same as any other moment. So it's like, here I am, not clinging to this moment or avoiding it. Yeah. Just here. Like,
it's very tricky.
Yeah. So that's the first answer, and hopefully that answer is helpful. That's the number one thing. Is like, is the answer helpful? Does the answer make you trust reality more, fear less, love more? Then that's a good answer. Not about being, speculatively a true map of the cosmos or whatever. Because what the fuck does that mean? Like,
that's we're interesting map too, though.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fun game to play if that's the game that you want to play. But Brian, I'm trying to answer kind of in the spirit of Brian's work, which is about trust, love, fearlessness, and healing. Yeah. The second answer would be that even though your life is predetermined, you can experience your life as extremely chaotic if you rage against what Eckhart Tolle would call the isness of life. Like, you just exist. Like, if you always need to have the TV on in the background, externally or internally, like always thinking or always distracting or always clinging to striving for something different or always planning the future, always rethinking the past. Life is still happening to you exactly the way that it was determined to, but you're resisting it as it happens. Yeah. So to live a life where you're consciously engaged, like your agency is actually present, your agency, your free will, your ability to navigate life consciously, if that's active, what you're actually doing is like, if the truest part of you is active and expressing its agency, then you're actually in complete surrender to reality as it is. Those are the same thing.
Yeah.
If you're trying to, like, let's say you sit down and you go, you know what I'm going to do with my life? I'm going to get a degree by this age, and then I'm going to get this job, and then I'm going to make this amount of money. I'm going to buy this car. I'm going to get this boat, and then I'm going to get this kind of wife, and then that's going to be the end. And then I'm going to probably like retire, and I'm going to go here. You want to map the whole thing out. Then you're always going to have this anxiety about, like, am I doing my map right? That's a map that you made up with your individual consciousness, which just doesn't get the big picture. But when your individual consciousness simultaneously surrenders to the universal isness, reality, consciousness, beingness of reality, then the part of you that's acting in free will, in agency, is so attuned to what's destined that you're both letting fate unfold and acting freely at the same time. They intersect. And to operate at that intersection is to be fully in the present moment. They don't go against each other, my individual free will and the cosmic will. If your individual will is going against the cosmic will, you're just living in the delusion that you're separate from the cosmic will when you're not. So they're one and the same thing, which I guess is similar to the first answer in that two things that seem to be opposite, it's free will or it's determined. I have an individual will or there's a cosmic prescribed will. They seem to be opposite, but they're actually the two things that you have to hold in your left and right hand to experience reality the way that God wants us to, fearlessly and in love.
Yeah. And that feels like the second one feels true to me as well. Like I've had a lot of, I think everybody does think about determinism versus free will,
right?
And like what is really going on within our world, whether you're thinking about ideas like reincarnation or not. That's still so interesting to think about. And where I was going to say where I've landed, but where I currently sit is that it's probably just both, but in a way that's too big for me to totally understand. Like, yes, I do have free will, but it's determined, and I'm me and I'm God.
Yeah.
So it's hard to separate those things.
Right.
And it's kind of asks faith of you a little bit that, like, no, there is an answer that makes sense, but the perspective you have right now can't totally grasp it.
Yeah.
But there is a way it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if God is all knowing and doesn't make mistakes, it's probably just fun to forget the big picture a little bit. Like, it can be fun to play a video game and forget about your partner and your career and your goals and all those things and just play the video game.
Right. Just get immersed in that.
Immersed. Immersion is joyful.
Yeah.
Immersion is fun. So God chooses to get immersed in certain parts of reality. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's fun. Like,
yeah,
that's
it
cool.
does.
So if you feel called to just be immersed, then just be immersed. And if you feel called to zoom out because you're freaking out, and it's like, wait, stop the trip. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Stop the trip then. That's great too.
Yeah.
They're both fine.
Yeah. Something that was interesting was the idea that the masters could either tell you, you didn't do this quite right. Because that kind of implies that there is something wrong to be done, that you can do wrong within your life.
No, the masters actually insist that there is no such thing as doing anything wrong. They actually insist that. So it's more like, you didn't quite catch the bus, catch the next one, but it's not even like you did something wrong by not catching the bus. It's kind of just like, it's more of just like a loving reassurance. That's like, if your kid is playing soccer and they just try to kick, they miss the ball and they fall and hit the back of their head on the grass, and they're just completely embarrassed and they run to the sideline. The mom's not going to be like, you did that wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, you kicked the ball wrong. Like, that's not even the way that a mom thinks. Like, the mom is just like, I love you so much. Continue playing soccer.
Yeah.
It's more like that kind of correction than the way that we might correct each other sometimes when we're in ego and separation, which is like, oh, you made a mistake. Like, they don't think that way. Like, when people emerge, another really good example of someone who's done this exploration in a very different way is Chris Bach, Bache. He did 6 tabs of acid 40 times, and he did it supervised by a clinician, and he spent a full day taking notes on every experience afterwards. So
sorry, how many times was it?
Like 40 times over 30
okay.
years. So it was a lifelong exploration. He took it very seriously. Everyone was supervised by a clinician, the same clinician the entire time. He took a full day. He would listen to a playlist while in the experience. The next day, he would listen to the entire playlist while taking notes on the experience. So it was the most systematic study of deep high-dose LSD experiences ever conducted, the most controlled and the most meticulous notes. And he was a professor of philosophy of religion, so he was well-versed in documenting religious experience, and the best experiment that's ever been done with LSD. And what he found was that there's no such thing as doing anything wrong in a human life. There's only a such thing as just moving forward and learning as the process unfolds, and that we reincarnate into whatever role we need to reincarnate into to see things from every angle until we see the whole picture. And that's it. So he would be like a really rich white banker, and then he would be a poor black woman with a bunch of kids. He'd be like at a laundromat in the hood. And that would be 2 lifetimes right next to each other that were so different. It would just be like bang, bang. Because when he went into the deep LSD experiences, he would spontaneously live these different lifetimes. Like that's what would happen to him.
Wow.
And so he explained it he uncovered the same understanding of the process unfolding and the eternal nature of the soul as Brian Weiss did, obviously through a very different way. But no, there's no mistake.
These masters, would you suspect that they are kind of the same thing that we are? They're the same kind of spirit, but maybe just farther along the path than we are?
It doesn't say. I would assume I would have the same line of reasoning as you just expressed.
Yeah. Which would imply that potentially our spirits would eventually become in a similar role.
Again, I would assume so.
Or we could be doing that same role for other people kind of simultaneously, that like we are fit to be the teachers of some things at the same time that we are learning lessons that are at the same level.
Yeah.
But we're just more advanced in one area than another.
Right. Yeah, I would think that would be the case too, because if reality is unfolding itself in all of these differentiated expressions of itself, it is simultaneously all the diversity and the unity. And so that would be probably that would just be true in general.
Yeah.
You know, even of a soul's experience or of a soul's reality and all the layers of a soul.
Yeah. Did his research give any idea that there is an end to this?
No, it was more like a lot of the quotes that he chose to select, which say a lot about his perspective on the process, was transcendentalist poets and writers basically saying, I'm going to be coming here forever. This is what I do. Like, I just come in and out and through this thing, and that's the deal. And some metaphysicians take a perspective where you live lifetimes until you're done, and then that's the conclusion, and then you live with God forever in the end. But that perspective on forever separates forever from, it separates infinitude from finitude. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, is it really forever then if there's a separate concept still where people live temporarily? Isn't it more forever if we just forever take finite forms? Like, if it's forever, then it's an all-inclusive process. There can't be a forever that's separate from the finite, because that's not really forever. Because forever also has to be without bounds spatially and temporally.
Yeah.
Well, forever already is temporal. Forever also has to have no bounds spatially. That's what I mean to say. And so there couldn't be temporary lifetimes happening outside of infinity. It's more like there is an underlying infinity which has always, is now, and will always express and differentiate itself for the purpose of recreational self-exploration. And that's what we do. We love doing it. And we, therefore, are diversity installed with a fail-safe. If things ever get too fucked up, there's that fail-safe. That's like, well, we're unity. We can just drop it. We just stop playing. And so the struggles and the challenges that we learn are for the purpose of differentiating and exploring and experiencing. And then obviously there's like religious perspectives, I guess particularly Christian. I don't know much about what all religions have to say about this, but obviously there's like an evangelical perspective that you could go somewhere good forever or somewhere bad forever.
Yeah.
There was a really interesting story in Only Love is Real, purpose of the title or the inspiration of the title. A near-death experiencer went to a hell realm, and Jesus appeared in the hell realm, walked up to him and said, "This is all an illusion. Only love is real." And then they just turned into heaven. And so
this was, just to be clear, you do mean a near-death experience, not like a...
Correct. This was not a hypnotherapeutic regression. This was him reporting a near-death experience that he felt went along well with the theme of his book, because he ended up researching them too.
Gotcha.
Because they are so similar.
They are.
The way that people report the experience of dying in remembered past life experiences and the way that people experience dying in near-death experience align with each other and with the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So Brian just took like, okay, this is really just the way that it works. And yes, there is heaven. Yes, there is a realm made of celestial light where you interact with beings that have nothing but love for you. And yes, we fall out of that into physical form. And yes, there are hell realms where we go, where we've surrounded ourselves with so much baggage that when we separate from our body, we're enveloped in it. And yes, Jesus shows up there and fishes you out of it. That's kind of the picture that he presented. So obviously hell is not forever. Hell is like a temporary thing that you subject yourself to, just like it is on earth. Like, right. We know that. Yeah, we know that we do that. Yeah. We know that we temporarily subject ourselves to suffering because of our own baggage and choices and misconceptions and illusions. Yeah. And that we actually do need reality to reach with grace into our illusion and point it out to us, because the truth will set us free. Like, we know that's how it works. That's how it works after this too. Yeah, that makes sense. You said something about like multiple hells. I guess, is there, because I've heard different religions cite the idea that there are different levels of hell or different levels of heaven. Does his research support either or both of those things? Not that I recall. No. Okay. Because he only had one hell story in the whole 2 books. And actually the heaven story, the only thing was that there were more powerful master channelings in certain between life experiences. Some were very brief, almost like there wasn't a strong signal, and some were like they would have a monologue. And some people would just die and just go straight into another womb. There was nothing in between. So that's the only thing. Yeah, but he didn't say anything about like these, like there was no organized levels or anything like that. There was a master who said that there's 7 levels that we pass through between here and eternity, but didn't say anything about the details of the levels or why it is that the eternity at the top of those 7 levels is chosen to become this. Like, no, again, just not a very speculative book. Just kind of reported the experiences and the commonalities. And since I think there'd be a couple of cool, I'm going to ask myself a couple of questions, basically. Okay. On the side, not that anybody who's a skeptic about this would still be listening anyway, but Ian Stevenson is the leading researcher on evidence of reincarnation. Okay. And the top 3 pieces of evidence, of which he's collected hundreds of examples, are skills known by children that they never learned in the lifetime, memories that children have of past lives that have been historically validated, including, like, you got a 6-year-old who only left Earth for 10 years, so she died 16 years ago, so people that she knew in the lifetime are still alive, and they go find them and verify the details that the kid is saying and introduce them. Like, Ian Stevenson did that a ton. That is a trip. Yeah. And then, what was the third one? God, that'd be so freaky. Yeah, super weird. Have somebody you care about die and then still remember, and then you meet them as a little. It was your dad, and now it's a little girl. And she's like, I remember all of that. I remember the boat. Like, I fell off the boat. I forgive you. It's okay. It's like, cool, but what do we do now? What do we do with that? Nothing. A lot of them didn't even stay in contact. It was just like, well, that's weird. Like, it's good to meet you, and that was kind of it. Like, some of them went that route. historical validation, skills not learned. Can't remember what the third one is, but I could count as a third just that it's healing. The fact that it heals them so much is a piece of evidence on its own that it's true because it has utility. And Brian also says that that early edits of the Bible had a lot more references to reincarnation in them that was edited out by Constantine or something like that. That's a different rabbit trail because that was just a thing he mentioned in passing, was just like all of the religious traditions have reincarnation in them to some extent, not necessarily as a permanent fixture, but like it's been a part of the thought system at some point. And he tends to take a fairly jaded stance toward organized Christianity, that it was set up to be an ego hierarchy game. And so they took out things that like, it's like, how are we going to pressure people to joining our religious organization if they realize they have eternity to learn and grow? We need to convince them that they're in or out and this is their only chance.
Yeah.
So fair enough to see it that way. Probably that kind of ego-based religion serves some kind of purpose too. So whatever. But the other question I wanted to ask myself, so to speak, the other thing I just wanted to bring up was that the reason that I'm so interested in reincarnation is that I think so many pathological beliefs, to go off that last point, arise from the ignorance about reincarnation. Is like, I only have this lifetime to be me, and that leads to express and learn and grow, and that leads to so much anxiety.
Of course, yeah.
Billie Eilish has a song about that, like, I can't believe I'm going to be me forever. That's such a prevalent fear. This is all I am. This is all I'm going to be. This sucks. Like, I feel like I'm stuck in this tiny little box. No, you're not. You chose to be this box for a little while. People also, this is a crazy example, but like, people sometimes have, I think, attachments to identity that wouldn't arise if they understood that they're only this temporarily. And one current example of that is transgenderism. Is like, everybody has feminine and masculine elements. We take incarnations to explore different aspects of our soul. No soul is masculine or feminine. They are all androgynous. This is that was in the Genesis story. God made them male and female. Then they were differentiated. And so souls are androgynous, and people experience their femininity and their masculinity in different ways. And I think the idea of like, I'm going to be a man forever can lead to a lot of anxiety, because it's like, but what about the other part of me?
Yeah, you're going to miss out on that experience.
Yes. Yeah. And so some gender transitions could be the fear of being stuck in one gender and feeling like that doesn't encompass what you are, and maybe understanding that we take incarnations to explore different parts of ourselves, and that's a good thing. Like, we, do that work. Because if you had 100 lifetimes as a female, and then you said like, I need to explore my male side, but it's going to be really hard, you could easily feel like you were a woman born in a man's body, because you kind of are in terms of your background. Yeah. So I think it's important for that. And I think it's also so important for death anxiety, because death anxiety is behind so many fears. There's people who are afraid of finishing projects. They'll start projects, but they refuse to finish them because it reminds them of death. So they have just dozens of things in their life that aren't finished because they're so afraid that if they finish the project, they won't exist anymore on an unconscious level.
Interesting.
And that's not true. You still will. And you'll just do something else. Like, it's like, I'm the guy that's working on my garage. So if I finish my garage, then like, what am I? Like, they've unconsciously identified as the role of guy who works on garage, because that is a ripple of the archetypal ego tendency to identify as, I'm Travis Rybarski. What am I going to do if I'm not Travis Rybarski? And the answer is like, be fully present as Travis Rybarski and just Travis Rybarski it up to the fullest, and then let it go, and then go do something else. That's a rational answer that's grounded in love and trust. Yeah. But, I'm not just Travis Rybarski. I'm all these other things too. I got to express all that I am. That comes from this pathological understanding that we're just one person, we're one incarnation, and we try to make something that's finite permanent by avoiding death, because what we really want is to acknowledge that we're so much more than the one lifetime that we're living. We're so much more than that. Yeah. And I think it results in suicidal ideation too, because people crave going beyond the life that they're living. And if they understood I'm going to die one day and that's going to be just fine and I'm going to carry on, I don't think that they would want to kill themselves. I think that's tied up in the death anxiety, that's tied up in the I only live one lifetime belief.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that's it on that. That's why I think it's so important. I mean, anything that's true is important, but it's like when something is true that affects every area of your life, it affects your life itself, your identity. Like you identify as a biological animal, like a Homo sapien, and that's your core identity. That's a really, really stressful place to live from.
Yeah. Yeah, I think over the last few years, my gut has said reincarnation is probably real, and I think that has reduced my anxiety generally. That like I don't feel as worried about not having an experience because maybe that's just this isn't the life for that experience or whatever. Like that is something I've thought about.
Yeah.
I do have a couple more questions. Was there anything to suggest that there might be physical similarities between a person in this life and a different life? Like, do they look similar to each other?
Other books on, not other books on reincarnation, but other metaphysical books that I've read have asserted that. So I tend to think that. There's a website that documents significant reincarnations. And I'm going to Google it real quick because I would be really interested, actually. Not interested, but like I think it'd be really cool to shout out the website.
Sure.
Oh, you can do it. We have a producer.
You just put it on this.
Evan, yeah, can you look up significant reincarnations of historical figures? And there's one main website that does a lot of it, and they always look extremely similar, and they fill similar roles. Like, you know, look up who, Dean Radin. We've read him, The Conscious Universe by Dean Radin. Look up who Dean Radin was. Max Planck. Dean Radin was the physicist Max Planck, who was an extremely transpersonal physicist who was trying to stretch people beyond their understanding of like their place in space-time. He did it as a physicist as Max Planck, and then he did it as a transpersonal psychologist as Dean Radin. There's founding fathers who are mystics now. All sorts of interesting examples like that. Like the
Souls?
Huh?
Journey of the Souls?
Not Journey of the Souls. Look up Max Planck, Dean Radin, because that's one of the examples on there. So that should pull it up. The prophet Thomas from the Gnostic Christian gospel was the only founding father to sign the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the third document I can't remember the name of right now.
Magna Carta?
Research?
Yes, reincarnationresearch.com.
Yeah, that's what I'm on right now.
Pretty straightforward website. Pretty straightforward title.
Was it Magna Carta? Was that the other one you were going to say?
Let's find out. Look up Gary Renard on that website.
Gary Renard?
Renard. So this is a separate body of research. This does not come from Brian Weiss' work. I don't know his perspective on this.
Yeah.
So this is...
Apostle Thomas?
Yeah, so Michael Tamura is his other reincarnation right now because advanced souls become two people at once sometimes. So Michael Tamura and Gary Renard are one person right now. And Michael Tamura actually officiated Gary Renard's wedding. So they're friends, and they look identical. And they're both spiritual teachers that are compatible, teach compatible teachings. And they have acknowledged to each other, like, yeah, we're the same soul. And they were, what was the founding father that they were?
Roger Sherman.
Thank you. And he signed what 3 documents? That's a separate Google. Roger Sherman was the only...
I guess probably the Declaration of Independence.
And the Constitution. What's the third one?
I don't know.
The Revolutionary War. That was a joke.
Maybe it could be the declaration of that, I guess?
The Declaration of the Revolutionary War.
Maybe?
They all look identical.
Interesting.
The pictures of Apostle Thomas from back in the day looks exactly like Roger Sherman, who looks exactly like Gary Renard and Michael Tamura. When Catherine from the first book, that was the patient that the entire first book was about, had interactions with significant people from past lives, she would always tell Brian, I know this person, they're this and this, or I know this person, they're this, or I don't know this person, meaning this is not a person who's in my current incarnation as Catherine. So interact with a great friend in a past life and be like, this is my mother, as in this soul is currently playing the mother role in my current lifetime. So she would say that, but it didn't exactly say in the book whether that was because she recognized their facial features or just recognized them on a deeper level. So Brian didn't say that specifically, but he implied it, and reincarnationresearch.com has a bunch of those cases.
And I imagine there's a lot of things that he might in private say that he would not publish in a book.
Yeah.
When he wants to be taken seriously as a therapist.
No, he doesn't care about being taken seriously as a psychiatrist anymore. He cares about sharing information that's healing. Like, he is a healer. Mm-hmm. And so his job is not to, share. Reincarnationresearch.com is a very different game. Like, it's speculative, and it's about satisfying probably mostly idle curiosities. It's useful information, just like history in general is useful information, but only to an extent. The really valuable thing about reincarnation is the faith and trust in reality that it cultivates and the healing that it triggers. And that is so important, because we're having all of these therapeutic modalities going on, and they're all about fishing around in people's individual incarnations, which is simultaneously validating to them that they are just this one person, which is the cause of a lot of their fear in the first place, is the ego identity as the one character, the one body. Mm-hmm. That's the cause of so much of their fear. And so many of our therapeutic approaches today are designed to continually convince them of that lie, instead of freeing them to the reality that, yes, they are an individual. Yes, that is great. Yes, they are eternal and cosmic. Yes, they are temporary. Yes, they are permanent. And that's fine. That's a real healing kind of perspective. Uh-huh. That's what matters about it. I have a teacher, a friend, a mentor that I send questions to, Neil, and I ask him all kinds of questions about, like, what was your past lives? Or, like, I'll find someone and be like, yo, is this so-and-so? And he'll never respond to those emails. He just doesn't email me back. And then I'll sound like, why is there an aleph and an ayin? And they both make the ah sound in the Hebrew alphabet, and he'll respond. But he'll just, like, ignore the other ones. And I think that a lot of spiritual teachers are wise for doing that, because a lot of it, and I'll tell him, that's just idle ego curiosity. I'm asking a stupid question because I'm curious, because my ego would think it was cool, blah, blah, blah. This is a stupid question. And so I like reincarnationresearch.com, but it's not that. Does it matter that I know if Apostle Thomas and Roger Sherman were the same soul? I mean,
if you're interested, I guess it does.
Maybe it could encourage. I think it can be helpful. Like, I had Brian Weiss has a YouTube video that's 36 minutes long that walks you through the exact procedure he's doing with these patients. So you can go do a past life regression right now. You'll be done by 11 p.m. tonight.
Wow.
You have to really set your intention first and give yourself over to it, because it can be really easy to get distracted when it's a YouTube video that you can just listen to again tomorrow, compared to you sitting there next to the guy. Yeah. So you got to just, set aside the time, definitely be completely sober, and just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm not sleepy, and do it. I had one that actually worked. And I can't go into the details, but I was not anybody that I know or have heard of or anything weird like that, but I was a spiritual teacher for a small tribe of people, and I made a mistake and learned a lesson, and I looked back in the in-between, as not in the in-between realm like with the masters like Brian describes, but just as I was leaving the world, I looked back and with total peace, just reflected on my mistakes. It was just like, okay, I was trying to guide in this direction, but by guiding in this direction and abandoning this other direction, I wasn't able to actually teach what I was trying to teach. And so I had basically, I don't really care. I had a sexual relationship with someone that I was supposed to just be a teacher for. Uh-huh. And it was because I was so focused on teaching the zoomed out unreality of the world that I was neglecting the beauty of the diversity and incarnation and specification of the world at the same time. So since I was out of touch with that, I had a relationship that wasn't congruently aligned. Mm-hmm. It was kind of an unripe impulse with this lady, instead of like marrying and starting a family, which is a perfectly holy thing to do. So I zoomed out of the lifetime, And I looked back at that life, and my name was like Hogranoth or something, and I Googled it, and I didn't find anything on it. But it was something that I'm processing now, is like, if I zoom out of life, none of this matters. None of this is real. None of this means anything. Like, it's just an eternal dance. But that was what I learned in that lifetime, was like, yeah, but it's an eternal dance, so do the fucking dance. Like, do the dance. And this is something that Neil tells me, recognizing this, is like, play the game and play it well. Because you're playing the game, play it well. Play it with justice, play it with integrity, be present for it. Excel in school, like kick ass in school, play the game. And that was something I learned in that lifetime. So when I did the regression video, because I had been talking to Neil and my friend John about that, praying about that a lot and exploring that idea, how do I balance being temporary with being permanent, and what really matters, and how do I see both sides at the same time? I had the one past life experience where I best and most potently learned that lesson. It was just nothing but love, peace, and learning. And so knowing that I've been in a certain role before and have gained that experience already is definitely useful. And all that to say, for that reason, it could be useful to know that Apostle Thomas was Roger Sherman, was Gary Renard. Like, that is useful, because it helps us to recognize we have so much more experience behind us than this one lifetime, so much more wisdom behind us than this one lifetime.
Yeah.
And that means that we can be of way more service than we are if we think we're restricted to this one lifetime.
That makes sense. Yeah. Were there any instances of someone being incarnated as something other than human?
No.
No? Just all human.
Yeah. In Brian Weiss's work, it was all human incarnations.
Interesting.
I saw a talk at the Self-Realization Fellowship in Phoenix by a monk there who said that we do move through, we have all of the mineral experiences, and then all the plant experiences, and then all the animal experiences, and then all the human experiences, and then whatever, then maybe masters, or, actually his teacher, not personal, but his guru in his sect of yoga, essentially, Paramahansa Yogananda, did teach that his teacher, Sri Yukteswar Giri, left Earth to go coach spiritual teachers in a celestial world after he left his human lifetime as Sri Yukteswar Giri. And this monk was teaching that dogs sometimes, who are extremely conscious and unruly, graduated from being dog to being human once and fell back. So they have one human lifetime under their belt, but they're a dog. So they're really rambunctious and hyper conscious and intelligent and weird. He taught that, and that different souls take different pathways through that, which may relate to the spirit animal concept. Maybe it's about your soul's history. So that's one theory on it, but that has nothing to do with Brian's work specifically.
Interesting. And I think this is my last question. Did Brian have any experiences himself about past lives that like reinforced this?
He, not beforehand. No, never. His regressing Catherine was his first interaction with reincarnation at all. He had heard heard it in passing, just like anyone's heard it in passing.
Sure.
Some kind of ridiculous, bastardized, westernized version of it. But when he regressed Catherine and she reported being a Rhonda who lived in Egypt and had blonde hair, and he was like, what the hell are you talking about? And then her experience, I think that was her choking death, healed her fear of choking. He was like, what? And then he looked into Ian Stevens' research and was like, what? And then went down this rabbit hole. He had no background in it, and he doesn't describe any of his personal experiences that occurred even during or after his adventure into this area. But based on his intro of Many Lives, Many Masters, calling Carol his soulmate, I'm guessing he has had memories now.
Probably, yeah.
I'm guessing, yeah. But just not the subject of his books.
Makes sense.
And then he has a later book that would be really cool to check out. If one of like the takeaways of this is like you can do his YouTube video, like I would love that. Like that's one of the takeaways I want to emphasize in this video is like you should. I've been doing it. It's great. If you want to do it, if anybody wants to do it, we can all get past life regression for free, and it's extremely healing, and it can make you so much closer to reality. And by reality, I mean God. To understand the innocence of learning and to understand the eternity of experience is so helpful, and it's free. It's on YouTube. It's just a choice to do it.
That's really cool.
And then the other thing that's a really cool takeaway from this that I haven't checked out yet is Brian Weiss published another book called The Masters Speak, where he just publishes everything that he's heard a master say between lifetimes. So that's basically a scripture.
Interesting. Yeah. That was really interesting stuff. I don't think I have any other questions. Was there anything else you wanted to tell me about?
One last lingering thought was just the mineral to plant to animal to human to beyond thing. They link back to the same place. It's not really a progression from beginning to end. So pre-mineral is the same thing as post-archetypal demi super god or whatever the fuck is at the end of the thing. So it's a cycle. We're not moving forward up a ladder, striving effortfully in the direction of God. That's not the way that it works. It's cyclical, it's temporary, and there's absolutely no rush.
That is interesting, and it makes sense to me, and it makes me wonder if, like, maybe there could be something, if that is, like, the real kind of progression of it, maybe there is something that is beyond being a human to being a mineral. Like, there's something about being a mineral that is more advanced than being a human. It's obvious how being a human is more advanced than being a mineral, but maybe from a different perspective.
Obvious to a human.
To a human, yeah.
Incredible.
Little racist.
Literally, though.
Yeah. But it may be that there is something about being a mineral that we can't even understand is much deeper and more advanced than this.
Right.
But this is also deeper, but it just goes in a cycle, and it's like there is just the next lesson you have to learn and these different types of existence that allow you to learn these lessons.
Yeah.
Which, like, sounds like a macrocosm of the microcosm that we're talking about, of, like, the lessons that you learn, maybe never ending, maybe just, like, going on forever, and you just keep living lives.
Right.
And maybe there are, like, like there's a second hand and there's a minute hand and there's an hour hand, and at different times you're doing different parts of these cycles.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well said. We can end it on that. Night school.
Night school.